Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Kuo, and I am the Washington State Ambassador for Resolve, the National Infertility Association. I'm also Public Relations Director for the Seattle Asian American Film Festival. I'm an advocate for family building legislation in two Washingtons, our capital Olympia and our big capital, Washington, DC, like Carol Gavhane over here. Also, I'm the moderator for today's live stream. I'd like to welcome everyone to the live conversation for Grief Like No Other, Holding Space for Healing from Miscarriage, Stillbirth, and Infant Loss. As a miscarriage survivor myself and a mother after an infertility diagnosis, I'm very thankful for this sacred space today to discuss some of the stories of the Asian American community through 3 short films and our special guests' perspectives. I'm also very thankful to programming director Ellison Shea for opening this platform to the community because of her own mother's experiences with recurrent miscarriages. Firstly, we at Seattle Asian American Film Festival would like to acknowledge that the land we reside on belongs to the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish tribe. It's our obligation to stand in solidarity with the Duwamish as we work towards creating visibility for the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. We're committed to dismantling ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and other systems of oppression that affect us all, and resist the erasure of Indigenous histories as we work towards honoring and inviting truth into this space. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our partner, Northwest Film Forum, and our sponsors, C89.5, ACLU Washington, the UW Department of Communication, the JACL, and our fiscal sponsor, Sunpike. We'd also love to remind you that we have a number of restaurant partnerships this year across the greater Seattle area, offering special menu items or discounts just for SAAFF. So visit bit.ly/SAAFF2021 for more details. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists for this conversation. Perhaps you could wave when your name is mentioned and give us a hello. First of all, Carol Gavhane is a family building advocate and co-owner of a handcrafted intentional jewelry line, Asha Blooms, which was inspired by Carol and her husband's journey through multiple miscarriages, multiple rounds of IVF, and secondary infertility. Carol and I have been roommates at Resolve's Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill, and I've always been captivated by her determination to pay it forward and use her voice. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Next, Stephen Nguyen is the director of Blastburn, in which he also appears in human and animated form. He is beaming in from Southern California today, and Steve and his wife had a daughter and then experienced 2 miscarriages, beginning a year later after their daughter's birth. He has also penned a children's book, To Baby from Daddy. Steve, maybe you can correct me on that title. He released,
You're good.
Yes.
You're good.
He released Blastburn on social media last January 2020 and mentioned to me that the death of Kobe Bryant happened just a few days after his wife's second miscarriage. So like me, I take it Steve is an NBA fan. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you for having me, Annie. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of the conversation.
We're glad you're here. Next, Haolu Wang is joining us from London. She is a Chinese-born screenwriter, director based in London. She's worked for the Chinese film industry, and her works explore psychological and emotional journeys of modern women. Haolu creates immersive, subjective narratives, often blurring the boundaries between reality and imagination. The Pregnant Ground is a great example. Her storytelling sensibility leans towards psychological suspense and surrealism, and The Pregnant Ground is a psychological fantasy film about a woman going through trauma and loss, starring Lu Wang. Welcome, Haolu.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the panel.
What time
Happy
is
to
it
be here.
in
It's
London?
9.
9 p.m.
Yeah, it's not too late. It's good. Perfect.
Yeah, good timing. And then lastly, we have Surh, who's joining us from Vancouver today. Surh is an actress, and she also took part in writing.
Yeah, lead writer. Yeah.
Lead writer for Songbird, which led the short film program at the top of the program. It's a beautiful film that ends with a very healing message. And Surh has also been the actress in 2 other films, Chaos and Colossal, in recent years. So if you enjoy her beautiful presence and empathetic, on-screen relations, but just her empathetic presence dealing with this topic, I hope you'll look for her in the other films as well. Thank you for joining us today, Surh.
Thank you. I'm sad we have all this in common, but happy to be here together.
Yes. So let's begin our panel with a question for everyone. That is, I'm interested in knowing what were the real life events that led you to participate in developing this story, creating the story for an audience on film. Carol, let's see. Carol is not a filmmaker, but she has participated in lots of podcasts, and her voice is in an anthology of short stories. Could you tell us a little bit more about your journey, and then we'll go to the filmmakers and actors?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned in the intro, I had what's called secondary infertility. So for the life of me, I couldn't get pregnant the second time around. Everything about having the first baby was super easy. Everything about trying to have a second baby was extremely, extremely difficult. My daughter, who's my first child, is my first pregnancy ever. And I'm happy to say that I was able to complete my family. Henry, who's my second child, is my 7th pregnancy. So in between the 2 living children, there was a lot of loss, a lot of grief, years that I didn't think I could go on. It was all consuming. It really does take over your life. It's also a very lonely journey. And even though people are talking about it, you still feel very isolated. And so I felt like when I was in it, I really was unable to have the voice. I was so consumed, full of, just the grief and the everyday of trying to have a baby. Afterwards, though, something shifted in me where I felt so compelled to do something with all of the emotions that I felt. And I wanted to do something where it would help or lift other people along the way. And that's why I went to DC twice, to advocate for pro-family building legislation. Super, super important to get laws passed. So it makes it easier for people to have access to complete their families however they may see fit, whether it's through reproductive technology or adoption or fostering to adopt or whatever the mode may be for you. I felt compelled to share my story on multiple podcasts. Whoever wanted to hear my story, I was always willing to share the voice because I wanted to help someone else who was in the midst of their own hell to feel a little bit less alone. I wrote, a short piece that's in an award-winning anthology, and that to me was very cathartic because not just for me and my own creative process, but again, I wanted to be able to help someone with the written word who may come across the book to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it may not be what you think it will be, but I hope for peace for you. And then obviously the small business that I do, which is an ode to this journey, this 3 years of a full circle moment, hope, grief, loss, and doing it again and again.
Man. How about you, Steve? Let's hear from you. I actually took special note of your film and its significance in offering the male perspective to baby loss. Thank you for creating this film. Can you tell us more about the context around its creation?
Yeah, of course. I just want to preface this conversation by saying, like, I'm not speaking for all male perspectives when dealing with this subject. It was primarily a very personal journey. But yeah, no, I can talk about what I went through. I mean, how far do you want me to dial back?
How about maybe you wrote a director statement. I think
Yeah.
that the very top of that would be perfect for this.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's crazy just going back, because I'm always kind of like a in the moment type person, and like to get through these things, you literally have to always be in the moment, present, like just kind of like working towards the next thing. But you know, just thinking about it, yeah, it's a painful memory, and you know, we've had to, you know, basically bury it for the sake of sort of like getting through and, you know, living our lives. So yeah, it was a journey. You know, as an artist by trade, I see things very visually. You know, I just wanted to capture sort of moments, you know, because I feel like, you know, we all go through these moments of pain and grieving, but not necessarily have an outlet for it. So I didn't want to make any public statement or any sort of social media post or any sort of deal until my wife spoke about it first, just out of respect, right? So when she did, I felt like it was good to get some perspective, you know, just from an artist perspective, from my perspective. I went to Louisiana like a while ago, I think like 2019, to just kind of like reflect. And that was like around the time that my son would have been born. I spent about like 3 weeks there, you know, and it was, like I said, it was like a very cathartic trip. Just trying to like be one and just kind of like distance myself and just try to like, I guess tune myself back to normal. And, you know, it was beautiful, you know, it kind of helped me sort of, you know, just being out there and just kind of like not focusing on my day to day, you know, just, it was really cool. So, you know, meeting a lot of people, just kind of like hanging out there, I felt like the need to do something animated out here. You know, it's just, I thought it would be a good idea. So, you know, Louisiana, the bayou would essentially be the backdrop of everything. And then, you know, like the whole animation was essentially sort of like these little pieces of my life sort of mixed into this weird thing. And ultimately, you know, Carol touched upon it. But, you know, ultimately it's about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And you see that in the animation. It's about getting back to reality and, you know, just kind of taking your lumps and understanding that, you know, in order to get through this pain, you just have to, you know, be just accepting of everything that has happened. And, you know, yeah. So that's pretty much my perspective on why I made the film.
Yeah, we're really glad that you did. Just like anyone who has touched the themes of infertility or baby loss, the details are different. Like we're in different boats, but the same storm that we can identify with certain elements. So though your story is just one among the men who've this experience, I'm really glad that you shared that, because it may empower others to also come forward and feel not less alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was, you know, it was really crazy when I released it on social media. It got such a huge, you know, just wave of feedback, of positivity. And I didn't realize other friends and like people in the community went through that. You know, they were like very hush hush about it. But yeah, they told me, you know, thank you for making that. And then, you know, I got a bunch like video testimony just coming at me. And I was just, you know, I didn't necessarily do it to, you know, be a spokesperson or advocate for, you know, infertility or, you know, miscarriage and, you know, pain and all that stuff. It was more so just, I was really scared to release it, first of all, you know, like I have to say that because, you know, I've never done anything so vulnerable and personal like that, you know, and it was, you know, I guess like in hindsight now, I'm glad I did. And now I'm just kind of like, I'm here for anybody that I guess has sort of, similar shared experiences. And yeah, I'm always open to listen to the conversation. So that's why I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to listen to all of you talk about sort of your experiences as well.
Yes. So let's hear from Sarah and Haolu. Haolu, would you like to go first?
Yes, for me, I think I'm slightly in a different boat. I think I made the film at the time when I was quite conflicted about having a baby. I was a bit scared actually of becoming a mother, and so I kind of explore my worst fear, which is I become pregnant, and then I have a few doubts, and one day I'm incapable of being a mother, basically, and how I will have to deal with that grief and guilt. And also I was at a time in my life where I felt quite a lot of pressure from family to have a baby. And I felt I didn't have any space to really feel the desire myself and to prepare myself to become a mother alone, and which I think it's a very personal thing, and I feel like I needed that space and I didn't have any. So yeah, I think that's where emotionally, personally, that it comes from. But at the same time, because I grew up in China, actually, in mainland China, and there's a single child policy. So as I was growing up, I slowly got to know just how many women around me have had forced abortions. I think almost everyone at some point, I shockingly discovered of my mom's generation, everybody had, and I could have had siblings myself. So that was a shocking revelation one day. I remember I was a teenager, and and I suddenly just I discovered from like a slip of tongue from someone, and so that's such an invisible pain that women go through. And what shocks me more than the trauma itself, it's how little it's talked about or discussed, and how much people are trying to cover it up, and how little women even talk to each other about it. And the procedures were horrible, and women, they had to go through hell to go through the forced abortion. So I think a part of me was always aware of this feeling of invisible pain, and so that, I think that's my formative experience of being a woman. So I really wanted to make the film to talk about something taboo as well, and it's similar to Steve. I was quite scared to make the film because it was something quite vulnerable, and I never discussed it with people because as a Chinese person living in a Western world where it's quite free, and I did not know how much that experience is shared by anybody else. But I really wanted to make it because it was just becoming something I really wanted to make. So I made it. So yeah, and I'm glad to be here to be connected with more people that have had similar feelings.
Yes, we have quite a global panel here. And I really am glad you shared what you did about the context around creating the story, because the character in Pregnant Ground has that conversation with her husband, right? In which he confronts her for making her wait for 5 years.
Yeah.
And, it's great to hear how, there's an insertion of your own personal ambivalence, motherhood.
Yeah.
Could identify with as well. Sarah, eager to hear from you. How did you, so glad for your representation on screen through Songbird.
Thank you.
Just a captivating presence in the film. No wonder that it got the People's Choice Award at the Vancouver Asian Film Festival for short film. Could you tell us do you have a personal connection to this, even personally or through a friend? Or I know the director, Heather Hawthorne Boyle, she really has a very strong commitment to telling the stories of women. So can you tell us more about how you connected to the film?
Yeah, actually Songbird is based off of true events, which is mine and my husband's. Really, it's very similar to what happened with us. For us, I always knew that I had infertility issues. So when we got pregnant, and that was my first, and it says in the script that it's couple's first pregnancies. So when we first got pregnant, it was a miracle that we were able to do it without any intervention as well. And this title Songbird, it's just one of those things where we ended up calling her Songbird for some reason. We just had this sense that she was a she and she was going to be a songbird. So we just called it Songbird. The difference is in the film, my character, she miscarries in the bathroom, whereas I was on set. I was on set for Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And right before my scene, I miscarried. So I didn't even get to shoot. Like I contemplated, I'm there, holding my baby, my first pregnancy. I didn't know anybody else who had gone through it. I don't know anyone on set. So, I'm sitting there literally holding my baby, just thinking, I don't know what to do. My makeup is all ruined. I can't film. Is my career going to be ruined because of this? And I was like, I don't care. So I just went to the AD and I was like, I need to go to the hospital, I think. Right. So that trauma obviously stayed with me for a long time. And, I had to go through grief counseling. And I think it was just one of those things where in the middle of the night, the story just hit me like a ton of bricks. So I got up, and I think it's because I had gone through healing that I was able to finally talk about it, let alone write about it. So after that story just hit me like a ton of bricks, I just went to my computer, I wrote it in one sitting, and then I gave it to a whole bunch of actor friends and I asked them, what do you think? And, everyone said, you need to do this. You need to make this. And I put it on the back shelf, just thinking I'm an actress, not a filmmaker. So if it happens, it'll happen. But then I decided, when I did decide to finally pursue it, I feel like I wanted to test out the waters, and I wrote little updates about it. People were coming out of the woodworks, like high school friends, like everybody just saying, please do this. I've had a miscarriage. I never told anybody. And when I realized that common theme of shame that came with it, that to me, I hate shame, especially towards women. That stuff really upsets me. So that's the extra oomph that I had that said, you know what, I need to break off this shame. Because like I'm sure a lot of you guys, I received a lot of very not nice comments as to why this may have happened, some of the most ludicrous things. And they're almost always based on the woman's fault of us doing something. Actually, the triage nurse, as soon as I got to the hospital from set, I brought my own golf clubs. And when she saw me holding my golf clubs, and she said, why are you here? I said, I think I had a miscarriage. First thing she said to me was, well, have you been golfing all day? Like things like that. Right. So when I noticed that there's that common theme of shame, I just said, you know what, I want to do this. I want to break the taboo. I want to open up the conversation about this. So, yeah.
And I'm glad that you answered this question last, because it's a perfect segue to the next question about including certain elements in your films. For example, the fetus in the bathroom. I mean, there's a couple graphic scenes.
Yeah.
Songbird has one, pregnant ground, right? The opening scene with the bleeding in the swimming pool. Can you tell us more about your choices to include those elements? Just put it right up front.
That was a really difficult choice for me. The director, Heather, and I, we went back and forth on this for quite a bit. I didn't want to trigger anybody who had decided to watch Songbird as a source of healing. It was really important to me that I didn't want to leave anybody in a state of vulnerability. But then we realized, the whole point of this is to share the fact that other people have been through it. You will be okay. You're not alone. So we just felt like that. The film was also for people who haven't gone through a miscarriage and wanted to understand what is the journey like for somebody who's gone through it. So we felt like we needed to show that almost like realistic holding, cradling your baby. And I just want to share like how difficult it was to make, even because, you know, we were so concerned about women watching it. We didn't realize, me filming it, how triggering it would have been. So when the props department came, and Heather gave me a lot of notice beforehand, because I think when she saw it, she knew that it would trigger me. So when the props department came and showed it to me, I broke down, because it was just, I was reliving it, you know, and props to the prop department. They did such a great job. So even though it was that difficult for me to film it, and it was a difficult decision to show it, but we just felt at the end of the day, we needed to be as true and authentic to our story as possible.
Right, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Mhm.
Would you say the same, Haolu, for including the scene?
Yeah, I think it was important to, because for me, this woman, she starts to go through this journey from this event, and it's important to show this kind of overpowering image of blood, of a certain violence, and also it's a kind of violence from within her, because blood is kind of the interior life of women in a way. You know, we have period, and you know, this is, in a way, this loss, it kind of smears all over the entire screen, and that's when we have the title card of the film. So I know it will be quite, you know, a triggering scene at the beginning. It will be shocking, but I think it's important for us to understand what she actually goes through, the intensity of it. Yeah,
right. And could you tell us, Haolu, about how you selected the ground to be representative of?
Yes. So I guess it's because I felt like it's a little, this feeling is a little existential, because it's like life and death. There's no answer, and when it's Earth, it feels a bit like that. And also I feel like Earth, motherhood, I feel there's a link to it. And actually, because I was living in this, actually I shot it in my own apartment. And the apartment around the time, there were roadworks around, and there were lots of men digging the ground. And I felt also I feel like it's also intrusion on women's body in a way, the way they were digging, and I felt like women are not well supported during that time. There's this violence towards their body as well. So I thought it would be very symbolic to combine the violent roadworks, this intrusion of the sound and pressure, and this feeling in a hot day when, you know, when she has no space to breathe, and no silence, and, you know, to really deal with the loss. And I thought that somehow these feelings are similar. So that's how I chose the ground. Yeah.
So were the construction workers actual construction workers, or were they?
Some of them actually, they were not the best actors because they kept looking at the camera. But they were great, and they lent us some props, and most of them are real actors. Yeah, and we learned the trade from the real road workers. Yeah.
This is a fun element. I was curious about them, and I'm wondering too. I want to touch a little bit on the aspect of grief bursts and triggers that appear throughout. And Carol, perhaps you'd like to weigh in as well about some of the things that you saw in the films that were like, oh yeah, remember that, right? Like a pregnancy announcement at a birthday party, or walking past a playground and having children run up to you, and, you know, just reflecting on the loss you just endured. Can you tell us more about the decision to include those? And then Steve, you're up next, because I want to focus as well on healing, which I feel like your film really veers, you know, pivots us to. So Carol, how about we start with you in terms of things that you noted as a viewer in any of these films that resonated from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of everyone's films, all three films that touched me, and I cried. I can so relate to going to the party in Songbird, and then the couple saying, oh, we're pregnant, and then everyone running up to the couple, and then you leaving going to the bathroom, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Time and time again, you know, when I was on my own journey, you just scroll through social and you see someone's very happy post and you're so happy for them, but you're so full of your own grief and anger too at your own situation. And so that actually brought some of that back up for me. I also remember in the pregnant ground, you know, you touched on it, Haolu, but the blood in the pool, countless times myself where I've just had a pool of blood, may not have been in a physical pool, but you look down and it's just raining almost. And it brought me back to that time. And in your film, Steve, I mean, I just, you know, this isn't so much as a trigger burst, I guess, but it really hit me when you talked, when the person behind the camera asked you, you know, what are you doing here, man? Like, what's your journey? And you just, your words, your very raw words spoke to me, because it immediately brought me back to that time of, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I've got to get through this time, and I will. But for right now, I am grieving. I was very moved by all of the films, very much.
And really extraordinary to see folks that look like us on screen through this. It really brings things that are otherwise maybe even, you know, culturally shamed or secretive into the light. Like, let's talk about this. We're going to address this. You know, this is a real thing for 1 in 4 people, baby loss, you know, or miscarriage. And so is there anything that any of the other panelists would like to address around the elements that you included in the film based on either personal experience or things that you know happen in the either infertility or baby loss community? Some things that resonated with me is how it can affect love, you know, loss or infertility can affect love making, how it also affects other family members, like the grandmother appears in pregnant ground saying mom is sad too, you know.
Yes, and I think that's also difficult at the same time, because, you know, as a protagonist, you know that you made everyone sad, and then so, you know, you have nowhere to grieve yourself in a way, and you are really aware of how that has affected everyone else. And when you hear people telling you that, you just become overwhelmed, actually. So I you know, the actress is not showing very much, because I don't think you will be you will actually have the space yet to cry. You just need to process first, I imagine, you know, and I think that's very hard, and I think you will play that over and over and over in your head, and to think, what could have done differently, what could have been different, and because it's such an internal experience, it's like very physical for a woman, and so you also feel your body failed you, like you feel like, and it's just like it's an endless question, you know, mark, and it's like a black hole. You can really be sucked into it. So I really want to explore that, but I wanted to explore it in a way that is cathartic but and truthful, but still it's not just showing a woman sad all the time. I want to show different elements of it. So I thought fantasy would be a great way of incorporating different stages of grieving as well. I mean, I have lost someone I really love, so I think I know the feeling of loss and grief really close to my heart around that time as well, when I was making the film. So yeah, there was these stages of, first you just reject the feeling, like you don't want to deal with it, and you gradually deal with it and you accept it, and then you gradually you could heal maybe. And so it's those stages.
For me, Another reason why we wanted to do this film is because I know for myself, you know, the first miscarriage, my husband was super supportive and we were very close. But by the second, third, fourth, like when there's just consecutive, it's not to say my husband wasn't supportive, but we were on different journeys in grieving. So it did affect the marriage. And that's what I also wanted to show in the film that, and this is our story, you know, it did affect our marriage. Happy to say we are very happy now. um, but there are a lot of other relationships where, you know, I know that it has torn them apart. You know, when you don't know how to grieve and you don't know how to do it properly, and when you don't do it together, it can really break any type of relationship. So we really wanted to show that. Unfortunately, because it's short, we couldn't really do every single scene. Like there were a lot more fight scenes, and like you mentioned, even like love making scenes. I think there was one in there where Natalie, it shows that she's just not ready, like she's not going to be into it. There were a couple of more aspects of that in there, but the grieving, it can manifest in so many different ways. And I think that's why it was so important to share that you should grieve. Grieving is what's going to help bring healing in all the areas. So that was just for us. And if anything, my husband was executive producer for the film. Him watching me do those scenes, you know, and this is after that we had gone through our healing together, but him watching me do it, it hit him like a ton of bricks even harder, and helped him grieve more. And
Mm.
it made him realize there's more that I need to do as well. So, you know, it brought us closer. It was stronger. So grief can come out in many different forms. And for me, the relationship was a part of it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that both of you, you know, addressed, actually all three of you addressed relationship, how the effect on relationship from, you know, these experiences. Um, I'm getting a note that we have time for just like one or two more questions. So I think, although I'm really curious to know what got left on the cutting room floor, um, and maybe some of you will consider a sequel to address some of the things that didn't get delved into nearly as much that you wanted to. I wonder if we could address some of the things that helped heal you along your journey. For example, Steve finds solace by retreating to the naturescapes of Louisiana, and I went and into, you know, the serendipitous world of beekeeping, and I wonder if you could expound on things that helped you, healing elements along your way to through grief and mourning. For me, it was yoga. After the betrayal of my body from the miscarriage of 14 weeks, I really found that yoga helped me to trust my body again and find empowerment. So would any of the four of you like to address some of the things that helped you along the way? Or please do. Steve, we'll start with
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, no, definitely I had to incorporate bees into the mix just because it helped me kind of like guide me through sort of this weird journey that was going on. It was, I touched upon it in the film, but it was always a fear of mine, bees, for some reason. I don't know. It was just, it sucked. I don't know. Like I just didn't want to deal with them. I got stung as a kid once, traumatized me. Like lots of things happened, and you know, from then on, I was just like, yeah. And then you know, you see things in movies that kind of like perpetuate those fears, and you know, the Nicolas Cage scene from that Wicker Man movie. Oh man, did you guys watch that? It's pretty nuts, but it's pretty surreal. It's yeah. So anyway, bees were not good news. So, but you know, throughout that last year, it was really just a chance to kind of like get in touch with sort of like the nature perspective, like I said before, and you know, it was really important to me to kind of like understand sort of like why I feared things, right? And during that time when you're going through what you're going through, like fear is not really even like on the table anymore. Like I could have gone skydiving, I could have like done bungee jumping, like whatever. Like I just didn't care at that point. You know, it's like you're kind of like ready to just kind of like say, you know what, if it ends, it ends, you know. And you know, at least for me, like I don't know if it was like that for any of you guys going through it personally, but yeah, like it wasn't an issue anymore. So like I took that time to basically say, you know what, let's just get everything out on the table. Let's go through life and see what it has to offer. Because right now I don't see that light. I don't see that light anymore. You know, it's not there. Like I'm just still in the dark right now. So like that animation was really like just trying to escape the pain, you know, and then ultimately you just find yourself in a dark spot. So like what you're seeing is like my head, you know, like you're seeing the visualization of like what's going on in my head. And you realize like in order to break out of that and see the light, you just have to embrace that pain. You know, it's just a part of your normal. It's what it is, and it's just not going to go away. You can't bury it. You know, like I've gotten so much advice saying like, yeah, you know, like, you know, it'll go away, and you know, it'll, you know, you guys will get pregnant again, like, you know, and all that stuff is just kind of like, well, you know, I guess it's, you know, it's people telling you, you know, it's being supportive in a way, but it's like it's not really touching the surface of your pain, you know, and you realize it's just something that you have to get through on your own. So this film was really just my way of saying goodbye, you know, like, yeah. Yeah.
A beautiful farewell.
Yeah.
And in your director statement, I was really touched how it said, just like Miscarriage, the story weaves together different genres because it's not always orderly, right? So it's kind of a metaphor for the
Yeah,
journey.
like, you know, like I guess where I guess my project differs from everyone else on this panel is like it wasn't really scripted. It wasn't necessarily supposed to be a thing that like I wrote out or anything. It was really just like it was how I felt throughout the whole year, and that's why it was kind of raw in a sense. Like I guess you could call it documentary, but I don't even call it that. It was just very much a raw deep dive into a lot of different things. But you know, like, if I had time to think about it, like, you know, I've kind of seen, you know, everyone's short film here. I was like, you know, it was done so well, and I could never do it from that perspective. It's just, it's, you know, it's so beautiful, like, and it's, you know, like, so, you know, I did it very messily, and you know, I just did a bunch of things. Originally it was just supposed to be an animation, but then like, you know, the footage we shot in Louisiana, my director convinced me to kind of like throw it in there, and it says like, don't worry, trust me, like people will love it, you know, because like it connects to a reality element. It's not necessarily just like something fictional or something you just created on your own. It's, if you put it there, like people will see the connect, and then they'll get you. And then yeah, it was yeah, it was, I guess that's how it was born. And you know, I'm glad that people received it well.
Yeah, we did. How about Carol, Haolu, and Sarah, or any one of you in terms of healing, especially around things that weren't supportive, that people might have said or done?
I think what Steve said was really true. It's like you have to, it's something you have to go through on your own eventually. And I think also allow yourself to really cry, I guess, allow yourself to really just break down actually, because you need to let it out. And I think what we do when we really feel very sad is that we don't allow ourselves to feel sad. We try to prevent ourselves from feeling it. And I think you just have to actually feel it, and you have to hit it, and then gradually can come back up. Yeah.
I just talk to myself a lot. So I did like a lot of prayer to the universe, prayer to God, just and I was out in nature a lot. That I found that very healing. And the prayer helped me because it gave me hope that tomorrow would be different. And that's what I really needed at the time.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I gave myself permission to feel it. And even now, you know, I've gone through the healing, but if I'm grieving, I will allow myself to feel it. I also did things like I gave myself permission to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to attend a baby shower, or I'm not going to help people clean out or do a nursery. And if anybody had questions about it, then they can ask me. But I gave myself permission to avoid those things. I created boundaries when, I got the questions of, why do you only have one kid? I gave myself very clear boundaries of what to say to protect myself. Um, and really, I focused on the blessing that was right in front of me, which was my husband and my son. Um, I was I recognized how much of a blessing it is to have a son, to have a child. So I focused on that. And in terms of creatively, it just opened up the world of writing. So I write a lot now, a lot of other films in my head. So, um, but I would say generally, it's you got to feel it and allow yourself to feel it.
That's right. I have been delving into a lot of bereavement resources recently, and one advice that all of you have touched on that I want to just piggyback on is be like the buffalo. The buffalo will turn when they sense a storm coming, and they will turn and charge right into the eye of the storm. Don't be like the cow who runs from the storm and then gets swept up by the storm and ends up staying in the storm longer. At the end of the day, your quickest way through grief and to the other side is to face it. And before the last and final question, which we're going to do in one beat, I just want to read 6 things from a book from the Center for Loss and Life Transition. It's called The Grief of Infertility, which might be a mirror image, but there's 6 needs. 1, acknowledge the reality and appropriateness of your grief. 2, embrace the pain of your grief. 3, honor your hopes and dreams. 4, rebuild your self-identity. 5, search for meaning, which everyone here has done through your story making and advocacy. And finally, 6, receive ongoing support from others, which people can do through our community co-presenters like Resolve, the National Infertility Association, and Parent Support of Puget Sound. So finally, the last question in one beat, we're just going to go around very quickly. Could you tell us where you are on your journey now and what you're working on next? Carol, we'll start with you.
Yep. So I'm done with my family building journey. And where I'm going next is I'm still working on my purpose-driven business, which was born out of this walk with infertility.
Wonderful. Steve?
Oh yeah, no, I'm just continuing to work on various projects and stuff like that. Like I'm kind of like working on like making music right now. Throughout the lockdown, it's just been kind of like something that's helping me get through, just my dark thoughts and stuff. But yeah, and I'm also writing a second children's book. So that's kind of like all coming together now. So yeah, excited.
Looking forward to, I'm going to order your children's book dedicated to your daughter. To Baby from Daddy. Yeah, it looks,
Yep.
I'm looking forward to the second title. How about you, Haolu?
I actually just had a baby.
Hey,
And thank you. Yeah, I went through, yeah, I did what I was scared of. and I realized what parenthood is, and it's nothing like it before you actually experience it. But also now I can actually relate to the loss of it more, because I just cannot imagine losing a baby. It's just I cannot. Yeah, it's really painful. But yeah, I'm also working on 2 feature films. One is also about a Chinese woman's invisible pain, and about a woman breaking free from an abusive relationship. I'm been writing the 2 scripts during lockdown.
fantastic. Looking forward to following your project. That's a really important theme as well.
Thank you.
And Sarah?
For us, we've been on the journey of adoption for quite a while, so we're just waiting for the phone call right now. That's us. I'll be filming a feature, a big movie. I can't say the title right now, so I'll be filming that in March. Small role of that. And I also am writing a feature about a woman who comes to terms with her identity as a second-gen Korean Canadian. So, yeah.
Wow, some exciting projects. I know everyone here is on Instagram and has a web presence, so I hope that the audience will look and follow what's to come next from our esteemed panelists. Thank you all so much for joining this conversation of hope after loss and healing. It's a sacred space that we were here. I have my candle lit. And I wish anyone who's experienced loss, especially during the current pandemic, you know, the love and comfort that you need to find your voice and to continue on toward resolution. Thank you again, Sarah, Haolu, Steve, and Carol for joining us, and for the Seattle Asian American Film Festival for screening these 3 amazing short films. I hope that everyone will take the opportunity to watch them, that they are all free to access through March 14th. Please remember to vote for the films in Inventive after watching them for our Audience Choice Awards, and taking our audience participation survey that helps us collect information for grants. SAAFF is, as I mentioned, on until Sunday, March 14th, all online. So be sure to check out seattleaaff.org to see the trailers and get tickets and passes. Thank you all again. Grace to you and peace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.